All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a rousing edition of Are We Wearing Pants? Oh, r- wrong broadcast. Actually, this is, I don't know, we'll call this Saturday morning songwriting with Doyle Turner or Doyle Turner. Yeah. How's it going, Doyle?
I'm doing great. How about yourself? And I'm glad you're not going to seriously ask the question about the pants.
I'm going to leave people in suspense for both of us, right? Like, that's the, you know, just picture it, are we wearing pants? Put it in the chat to let us know what your guess is. Are we wearing pants?
Lightning pole.
Yeah, it's the lightning round. Yes. Ding, 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 ding. So Technic Tone, we already have a hello. Good morning.
Good
Welcome.
morning.
So Doyle, it's been a little while since we've done this, but it's always fun. And oh, Technic said, was that a COVID thing? Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. Wasn't it one of the Good Morning America reporters that one time was on the air and you could see like his boxer briefs? Um, he wasn't wearing pants doing the news on Good Morning America. So yeah, it's good. Michelle says, "Oh no, mental visions, face purple, wide eyes." Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we want people to stay with the program, not leave in
yes,
horror. Yeah.
exactly. Um, but Doyle, it's been a little while since we've chatted. I've been following your adventures on uh or actually, I keep getting these comments are great. Pants is a little different here in the UK. Okay.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. It's international this morning. I like it.
Yes, we are. I know Michelle's in Florida, I think. Ron is in Massachusetts. Technic's in the UK. We've got people all over the place. You're
Very
in
cool.
Bemidji.
I'm in Bemidji, Minnesota with snow on the ground, which is a new thing. So
Oh, Technic says he thinks you call them shorts for
ah,
the maybe that's for the boxer brief thing, the undies. We call them undies,
great.
boxer briefs, skivvies, something like that.
Underwear talk with Chad and
Yeah,
Doyle.
welcome to what do you call your underwear? Old
Call mine
Faithful?
Frank. I call him
Old
Frank.
Faithful. Yeah. Um, but but yeah, we have, not chatted for a little while, but I know that you've been busy. I think last time we talked was even before the International Treasures album came out.
Yeah.
Um, it may have even been either shortly after your solo record came out, maybe, because I think we talked about the show a little bit, or maybe it was coming up. I don't
Yeah.
remember, but what have you been up to?
Oh, just writing as much as possible, and then you get such a pile of things that you're thinking maybe some of this stuff needs to be recorded. I know that you know that because I see the all of the great recording you do on a regular basis. I'm doing so much recording that my soundproofing is falling down. Did you notice that?
Yes, I was gonna be like, "You also have a poltergeist. This is awesome."
that was a that was about a 10-minute repair. That's all that lasted. So, but
Oh, so
you know,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Um,
all my song videos that I've been putting up on my YouTube channel have this wonky little soundproofing, and I thought, I need to be a little more upper crust for at-home songwriting, but it didn't work
well,
out this morning.
yeah,
So.
I'm glad that you're stepping it up just for me. That's great.
But no,
But
I've been busy writing, and I've gotten to the point in my writing where I was talking to a couple people this week where it's like I don't even know if what I'm writing is good anymore because of just writing and writing and writing. And I was reading a newsletter that Brad Dunsey, our friend Brad Dunsey, puts out, and
yeah,
he was talking about that very same thing and had some really interesting things from Alan Jackson's viewpoint about his writing and how you really can never know if it's good until you let other people decide when they hear it. And so I was really appreciative of that wisdom this morning from him. And but yeah, love the writing and always writing first on this end of things.
I think Jason Isbell has said something similar where his job is to write it, not judge it, because it's kind of
Ooh,
like his deal is like he can't tell if it's gonna work until it's with other people too. Um, So is this way of writing, or I guess mindset, is this new for you at this point, or have you had that feeling before?
This is new, and I don't. Oh yeah, yeah. It is for others to decide. Technic tone is correct. That's a Guy Clark idea. Is that a song's not finished till somebody hears it.
Ooh,
But for
that's a
me,
good
this
one.
is. I feel like I'm deeper in the woods than I ever have been. Where I'm trying really hard to be vulnerable in writing and just write about. You know me. I'm heartfelt, or I write about feeling, and I'm not even sure if it connects. And maybe I just haven't been playing the new stuff out as much as I need to, because I have been busy with the treasures stuff and a whole bunch of other things going on. And it's exciting, but the writing has I haven't been able to keep up with playing it out.
So Tom, we're glad you didn't forget about us this morning. So glad you're here, Tom.
Good morning, Tom.
Um, so this mindset then, I love picking people's brains to see like where
Mhm.
that's sort of like, how does that affect your writing then? Do you feel that it has uh freed you up more than before, or was this a conscious thing, or this is an evolution, or I guess there's like four questions in that, but what are your thoughts there?
It feels like I'm in new territory with that part of it. The writing is constant. I write constantly, and that I feel is a good thing. But I've never felt this uncertain about what I'm doing, and
Mhm.
it doesn't matter. I really don't let it get in my head that much because I just uh, keep moving forward. I keep writing, and that whole idea that Pat Pattison puts forth is that 10% of what you write is going to be your best stuff, and how big do you want your 10%? And that's
Right.
what I'm basing a lot of what I do on is just I just keep writing, and maybe it's not even worrying so much about it. It's just like you finish a song and you always get that little boost, like, oh, this is awesome, like you won the lottery. And then you're thinking, well, does this translate at all? And well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. And on to the next thing.
Yeah. Uh, so when you say you're writing constantly, like, what does that mean for you? Is that like every single day? Do you set time aside, or does it just happen naturally, or what does that look like?
Well, for me, it's every day. That Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, really affected me when I read that. And so right next to me, I've got all my writing materials. And so every day I do a little bit of a gratitude journal, right? And I've
Cool.
done that for going on 2 years, and that helps me, not in terms of songwriting as much as just kind of keeping my mindset more positive.
Yeah.
And then this is, I love this notebook. It's a decomposition book, and it's made out of 100% recycled waste recycled pages. And so I love that. But every day I do 3 pages, like Julia Cameron says. And yes, Ron, I save everything I write. I wish I could take the camera down because I've just got this big pile of notebooks next to me, which is kind of fun because it makes me feel like I've made progress, right? And
It's
then every
awesome.
morning I read a little bit of The Practice by Seth Godin, which is just a game changer for me. And in fact, I subscribe to his daily blog as well. And so I get a double dose of Godin because he really approaches art from a really interesting perspective that keeps me moving without worrying so much about, oh, I didn't write the latest number one hit, I'm creating, and creating means that you have to be generous and vulnerable, and you have to keep. It's a practice, right? So those
So
are my three mainstays.
so Technic actually kind of brought up what I was going to bring up. I used to be a notebook guy.
Hmm.
But now I seem to write more on my laptop. Um, but I feel like if I ever croak, no one's gonna have anything to discover unless they have my password. You know what I mean? So I think there's something cool to be said for writing in notebooks and stuff from like a legacy perspective. But
Hmm.
do you write in a computer too, or is it mostly all just in books?
When I start songwriting, then I'll put it up on the screen, um, and that scares me a little bit because and what I'll do is I'll print out whatever I do, um, so that I have that physical copy of it, and I
Yeah.
3-hole punch it, and I've got my binders over here. so that year by year I can see what I've gotten done. I watched a short little video clip yesterday, and it was from Austin Kleon, who's
Yeah.
a writer, and he talks about when he finishes his notebook, it's time to weigh the notebook. And so he starts off with he's got this really cool scale, and he weighs it when it starts off, and then he starts writing in it, and he pastes things in it and all that kind of stuff. And then when he finishes, it's like a big deal, and he puts it on his thing and he weighs it so that he can see measurable progress. And then he'll write on the binder of it and stick it on his shelf. And I thought that was awesome.
I actually have boxes of notebooks from even like when I was writing songs in high school. Like I
Ooh.
have tons, like boxes of them. I should go back
Mhm.
to that because there's something very organic about it. Technic says just put your stuff on YouTube. Nobody will find it, but at least it's there.
He's
Well,
described my channel perfectly. I like
hey,
what Jay Bella put up though, that writing daily adds up, and I think that's really, really smart.
yeah,
I wanna save that.
yeah. That's Jeanette. She's joining us from Chicago. So welcome, Jeanette.
Ah,
I
good
know,
morning,
I know,
Jeanette.
I know lots of my friends that are on here. So yeah, awesome. Um, Michelle says still
Ooh.
working full time, so with notebooks there and a bunch at home. Then I write on snippets of paper and tape them into my notebooks.
I
Yeah,
like that idea taping because I will, one of the other things I do, I showed, before we started broadcasting, I showed Chad my desk, and it's basically like this, what the forest floor looks like in the fall, but with sticky notes, just like all over the place, and I've got a giant monitor. So, but I like that idea of taping things into a notebook because then it's there and it's organized rather than just kind of, because sometimes my pile of sticky notes overflows. So.
so, since the last time we talked, you had the International Treasures, which is you're one of 2 international treasures, which
Yeah.
is such an honor to have an international treasure on the channel. Um, but you and Ted released your project. How has that been going? I know that you've been doing some gigs as a duo. How's that project been going?
It's really fantastic. That project really came about from a discussion. Well, first of all, our mutual friend Matthew French gave us that moniker. We weren't that uh, full of ourselves that we would call ourselves international treasures, but he described us that way, and Ted asked if we could use that name. And but that really came from this discussion between some friends about needing to change the process of recording and then getting in a different space, getting with different people. And when we had that discussion, I just said, you know what, guys, that's great for you three, but my heels are dug in. I'm always going to record at Supple Studios with my friend Troy Foss. I'm always going to do it this way because this is the way that I know and I've been taught. And Ted threw that out the window, and we went to this Century Oak Studios in St. Joseph, Minnesota, and we recorded in this beautifully appointed studio that's a Quonset hut,
Yeah.
which is kind of like a half dome metal building, but it's beautiful on the inside. And we did it all live off the floor, no click. And it was one of these things where when we started recording, within the first minute or two, all of these bluegrass players fell in, and they were such amazing musicians that there's this real palpable excitement and joy in the recording because we were realizing this is going to work.
Mm.
And so Ted had all these great ideas to keep it this feel of like, people doing count-ins, these conversations that happen before and after kind of occurring throughout the album. So when you get done, you feel like you've experienced this album, and it feels like kind of like he describes it like a big warm hug. And it's real. The mix is bass heavy, so we've got an upright bass that just feels warm and like a vinyl LP from the 70s. And that project has just been going gangbusters. We're going to play Big Turn down in Red Wing in a couple of weeks, and that's just a real great festival where you can walk from venue to venue. We ended up getting bumped up to a larger venue, and some of the other band members are going to be able to be there. And we're playing before
Cool.
Megan and the Birdwatcher, who I just adore. And so, yeah, that's really been a great project. And now Ted and I are branching out into our solo. Well, he's doing Heba Jeba, which is his rock group, and then
Yeah.
I've started recording a solo album. So
Um, so for those, I have so many things that I wanna so the Quonset thing, like, some people watching may not understand what a Quonset is, but it is like a half circle building where it's kinda like if you imagine like a loaf of like a loaf cake or like a
mhm.
kind of like a I don't know what they call those. Do you know what
Almond cake, like
like an
a
almond
Scandinavian almond cake. Yeah,
right, that's what the building looks like. It's, like, round, and then, like, you go into the door on the end sometimes, or they might have doors in the middle, but, yeah, that's so cool, and you also recorded the way that they used to, you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, no click, played as a band, you know? You had to get the take, you weren't overdubbing, you were just doing it live. Did you I mean, so that's that project, so tell me about the new where's Doyle going with, like, the new solo stuff?
Well, as we've talked about in the past, I write with the singer-songwriter songwriting challenge that you've also written with. And this summer, during the summer session, I ended up having a run where I came up with songs that felt really, really good. But they were all like heartsick love songs, which doesn't translate to the Treasures project as much because it's more romantic, love songs.
Yeah,
And so what I did was I collected the best of those, and I worked with a friend of mine who helped me go through and do pre-production for the songs, and then we just went into the studio over Martin Luther King Jr. Weekend
yeah,
and did kind of a more of not live off the floor, but a band collaborative type of thing. And this person ended up being the producer for this too, and had suggested, Doyle, why don't you not play guitar on this? Why don't you have somebody else come in and play guitar? And that was hard for me to let go of that because I've always played guitar on my projects. And it was one of those things that we're going to change the process again. And so we're using clicks and all that kind of stuff, but we're doing things in terms of a take, and managed to get a trio of musicians that are just astounding, and the magic happened. So we've got everything tracked. We'll end up redoing vocals because it was a scratch vocal type of thing. But it's going to be it's turning out to be more of a jazzy kind of love songy feely album that I'm really super excited about. And I don't have a timeline on it, and so that is freeing as well, where I can take as long as I'd like to make it right.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's really exciting for me.
Do you have all the songs written then? I know you said you've kind of got it like that it's tracked and stuff. Do you feel like there's more songs that could be added, or do you have what it's going to be?
We even have probably three more than what we thought we would get. The My producer said to me, "You need to narrow this down to six out of the 11 or 12 that I sent her." And we ended up, I did rank order. Here's what we have to get these right. And
Yeah,
then the first day of tracking, we ended up going through so many of them. And then the next day we went, and pretty soon we ended up with 11 that I think will be on the album. But, we're really early in the process. We just did initial tracking of everything. But it's feeling like it's coming together in a way that other projects haven't. Not that this deficient, right? It's just that
yeah,
it's a different way of coming together in a different timeline. And we allowed that creativity both in time and with players and with collaboration between the players, that it's got a whole different feel. And I'm really, really enamored with it.
so, did you just use the pronoun her? So do you have a female producer?
I have a female producer, and I'm not at liberty to discuss the identity at this point, but that'll all come in good time. We wanted to kind of keep this on the down low,
It's
just so it
Cher.
can,
I kn it's Cher, we know.
or Cher's doppelganger, Amanda B. Perry, right, from the Twin Cities area.
Hey,
She's got that Cher voice, but no, it's not
if Cher
ABP.
if Cher and Celine Dion had a love child, that voice is Amanda B. Perry, who is if like, go listen to her music. Like, she is just
Yes.
it's like otherworldly what comes out of her mouth. Like, it's awesome. But what I wanna say is the fact that you have a female producer is awesome because there are way not enough female songwriters, female producers, female
Mhm.
DJs, female executives. Like, the music industry is a dude centered thing. So, like,
Mhm.
I think any of the females out there that are doing it, like, go get it because we need their creativity. We need their perspective. Like, dudes have
Mhm.
had a chance, right? Like, there's something like 98% of, like, radio songs are written by dudes. Like, that should not be that way.
Really?
Mhm.
Yeah, we're missing out on you said it best with perspective. We're missing out on a huge perspective of the human experience, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm really, really lucky in that I tend to lean towards female artists when I listen.
Yep.
And so it just felt really natural to have a female producer. And this person is super generous. And so I'm really, really excited to work with her.
Technic says, "I didn't realize the music industry was like that as well. The IT industry is." Yeah, I think, unfortunately, a lot of industries are, and I think music is definitely I mean, I think things are getting better, but
Hmm.
yeah, I think that's awesome, Doyle.
Yeah. No, I have to say the name Lori McKenna just because that has to happen every single time in any conversation. But didn't she just win? Didn't she just get inducted to the Songwriters Hall of Fame?
I think she did, actually.
And
Yeah.
something like 27 number one hits. She's one
Yes.
of my favorites.
Well, and what's cool about her is she kinda did it on her own terms, like, she kinda developed her own career, but she
Mhm.
also wrote for other people, and she also sort of played the industry game, and, like, she's very well respected. Um, yeah. Um, I think anytime you talk about songwriting, Lori McKenna has to be mentioned and also Pat Pattison. I think it's an universal rule. You just have to say the name and, it just summons the songwriting, gods to us.
Well, and she, like you say, she did it on her own terms. She did it from Boston, right?
Yeah,
Back and forth to Nashville, but while raising a family,
yeah.
and she is just utterly I love studying what she does, and I was so happy to see that she got inducted.
Well, you know who also did it not living in Nashville was Steve Seskin. I know you know Steve.
Yeah, yeah, I love Steve Seskin. He's one of the very first um, bits of aside from yourself, bits of songwriting study and knowledge, and I know the three you and you know him as well.
Yeah,
He's just
yeah,
fantastic and so meticulous in how he treats lyrics. And sometimes I feel like I'm pretty sloppy when writing, where he will, make sure he gets it to its absolutely correct. And so it's
yeah.
something to aspire to.
So I've been writing with a country singer-songwriter, and it turns out that she, like, lives super close to Steve in
Oh yeah,
California, so they write together, and so, like, she was sending me songs that they were writing, and then me and her are writing together, and then I use some of Steve's songs when I teach, so I was talking to Steve about, like, "I use your songs," and he's like, "Awesome," and then, like, I teach Pat Pattison's course for Berkeley, so
Berkeley. Yeah.
yeah, so I like, there's all these the songwriting world is really kinda small, and, like, people are they're always asking me, like, "Does everybody know everybody?" And it's like, kinda. I mean, there's probably about a 2-degree separation between everybody, you know?
When I think this weekend is Steve's songwriting workshop down at the Bluebird in Nashville, which
It
I
is.
attended a
Yep.
couple of years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, if
No,
you have a
he's
ch
fantastic, and he brings in these wide variety of songwriters and producers, and just is just top notch. I can't recommend that enough.
Did you see that I'm doing a retreat in October in Cross Lake?
No, I didn't.
Yeah,
That's
you should
awesome.
Yeah, like October 10th through the 13th. We're renting some cabins. Hoping to get about 20 people. We've got a few slots filled already, but yeah, October 10th through the 13th. And it's going to be fun. We're not charging very much for it. It's kind of one of the first times doing it, but yeah,
Oh,
it'll be awesome.
no, I think that would be fantastic. Why Cross Lake? Just curious.
Because there's cabins there, and
Mhm.
it's a retreat for people in the city. It's a couple hours
Okay.
away. You can go out in the woods, and you know Where the cabins that we're renting are 5 each cabin has, like, 5 bedrooms, so everybody can have their own room,
Mhm.
and then there's an event space, so we have a place where we can do performances, classes.
Oh,
We're also going to, have, like the price includes all the food and stuff, so if anybody's watching, and you want a trip to Minnesota in October, like, it's the perfect
beautiful.
time for beautiful stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely, check out I posted the course, or the not the course, the retreat at homesongwritingcourses.com, so you can check out the details and stuff. But Doyle, you should think about it if you're free. If you're not
Oh, I would
touring
love
if you're not
that.
touring or, in jail or whatever.
That would equal, likelihood of either happening. Yeah.
I know.
Maybe both on the same weekend if I'm lucky.
I was gonna say, like, you have when you go on tour, there's a higher chance of being in jail, I think. I don't know.
Well, I just Ted had recommended Ted Heineschewitz, my duo partner. He had gotten me this book called Trouble Boys, all about the Replacements, and it's a
Oh,
beautifully written book that's heartbreaking. And boy, their tours were something else. And the fact that they could perform the way they did, the fact that they could write the way they did, it really is a testament to their abilities as musicians and writers. But as I read that book, it's funny you mentioned the 2 degrees of separation. They have quotes from this person that, oh, I've met that person. I've been in that person's studio. And it's like, yeah, it's a small community in a lot of ways. And I think
yeah.
that's really a beautiful thing about songwriting is that the more I meet songwriters, the more I interact with songwriters, the more I realize that they're just generous people.
Yes.
And I've had communication with people where within the first couple of minutes you feel like you've met this person and known them your entire life because they're just so open and just good humans. And so I'm really happy to be that's one of the best things. I always One of the best payoffs to songwriting is the people I get to meet, like yourself.
Well, I mean, ditto. I mean, songwriting has introduced me to so many people, even people that are on here, Hazeline, Jeanette, Michelle, Technic, even though I don't know Technic, but I know some of the others a little bit more.
Hmm.
You, Doyle, Ron was on here, or hopefully still on here. Who else? Tom. I'm going back through the comments, but yeah, like, it's all about connection, because at the end of the day, we're all doing the same thing. Like, if you really break it down to what songwriting is we're trying to communicate something by putting words to music.
Hmm.
We're different than poets. We're not really poets, even though lyrics can be considered poetry. But there's something else that happens when you have to try to sing words to music. And we're also
Hmm.
not really composers, because writing music to writing music to words is different than composing. Ron's still here. Technic said he's or Technic. I'm using male pronouns. I don't know. But newbie, so that's great. Um, and then Ron still there, holding down Massachusetts. Awesome. But do you know what I mean, Doyle? It's like we're all kind of starting with that blank page, no matter how much experience we have.
Oh, exactly. And we all face the same blank page every single time. And I was reading a book by a woman who's a showrunner, and she writes television shows, and she
Yeah.
talks about how getting to the point where you can write is like running 5 miles. It takes you you have to run the 5 miles before you get to the door that leads to writing, and every time you get interrupted, you have to start back at the start. And so
Ah,
it's a difficult thing, but you can get used to that sprint or that run. And I thought it was a really interesting thing because it really talks about how difficult it is to get in that zone where, I was doing this yesterday. Um, I was writing and I everything I came up with was the worst idea ever. And I'm used to that, right? I know that.
mm,
And it's just I have to go through the worst thing ever until I get to something that's not the worst thing. And then maybe that leads to something that maybe one or two lines in what I write in a song maybe lands. But it's always it never I never open up my notebook or open up my Google Doc and just the pearls of wisdom fall out. It's always that running through the less than to get to the better.
um, do you ever get writer's block?
No, I because what happens when I get writer's block is I just lower my standards. It's true, and it works every single time. Oh, and Technic has it. Yes, it's easy to
Yeah,
write a song. It's hard to write a good song. Dead on, friend.
but see, that's
But
that.
no,
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
I
off.
I just lower my standards and I'll write garbage until the garbage is gone. Thinking back to, that
There's a
idea
song
of
title, "Till the Garbage Is Gone."
oh my gosh, and holy, I will have, ideas for days if we're gonna focus on the garbage because 'cause I'm so good at the garbage. I'm the best garbage man out there.
Yeah,
But there's that idea of turning on the tap, right?
yep. Ed
Sheeran,
Sheeran, yeah.
and you just open up the tap and you let all the dirty water get out until it flows clean. And so that's what I'll do is I'll lower my standards and I write the garbage and then I set it aside and maybe I can pick through and find what's good. Yeah.
Well, that's that concept of, what Pat Pattison always says is, 90% of what you write is not your best 10%, and that's true no matter what. Like, the vast majority of what you write is not going to be your best, so just write
Mhm.
and then determine what are the ones that actually deserve going back. I see a lot of people sort of paralyze themselves in their writing because they think every song can be sculpted into something great, and I
Mhm.
just think I call it throwing glitter on a turd. Like, it's still poop.
I love that phrase. I love it. And Hazeline is right on the nose as well, where I want to always write better than what I did before.
Yep.
And then that paralyzes me because it's not it's a game of it's a game of pages for me. I have to go through all of that stuff to get to the something better. And yeah, and if I start comparing to a Chad Shanks song or to a Laurie McKenna song or to a past Doyle song, then it shuts it right off. And so I just don't do it. The comparing robs all the joy for me. So I try not to
Well,
do it, though I sometimes get a little bit into it.
so, the saying is, comparison is the thief of joy, and
Hmm.
I think that's true because you have to remember the songs that you like are somebody else's best 10%, right? Like, you didn't see all the other ones that got them there. So,
Hmm.
and you may not be at the same spot in the journey as them. So, and you
Yeah.
may not even be the same person or have the same skills or have the same thing to say. Um, you know, I want to go back to this comment here about what I said. I don't polish songs. What I'm saying is you need to write enough to where you can see the ones that could grow wings a little bit more.
Mhm.
Because I guarantee you that if you're just starting writing songs, they're not very good. Like, yes, you may get lucky and the muse may fall out and you write something that could be good, but not every song deserves to be worked and reworked and worked and reworked. I believe, and this is totally opinion because people will argue about this all the time, but I think you can miss an opportunity to learn more by writing more, right? Like, think of like a wood carver. Like, let's say they carve very intricate things. Like, do you do you think you learn by just carving one thing, or do you think you learn by carving 1,000 things, right?
Yeah.
Same with like a brain surgeon. Do you want a brain surgeon that's done 2 surgeries, or do you want one that's done like 500 last year? Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Like, you want that skill. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I had to learn for myself, is that not every song deserves that type of attention. We got some good comments too. Hazeline says, I tell myself all work is profitable. So if I work hard on the song, but it's junk, there's something I can use later.
Yeah.
Totally. And isn't that what Seth Godin says too? It's about putting in the work. It's doing the practice. It's trying to forget the results and just do it because you do the work.
And so many times I'll finish a song and I know it's garbage. I know it's not my best. And so I'll say, okay, that's the stepping stone that I needed to take to get to the next one.
Yeah.
And especially this since January with the challenge, I've been writing stuff that I'm like, but I get it done. I finish, like Neil Gaiman says, finish things, right? You finish it. And then it's not what I wanted, but I just keep moving forward because those three led to maybe one that was maybe not as bad. Um, uh, Michelle was talking about not having hit that level of actualization in
Yeah.
her writing yet. And I want to encourage Michelle, because I'm a very new writer, relatively new. I've been writing uh, steadily for like maybe 5 or 6 years. And I've been in that particular swamp where it's just like I just keep doing the work, and I don't know, is it good or is it not? I don't have the experience to know if it's good. I remember being there, and I also remember turning towards this is a joyful creation, even if it's not going to be a number one hit song.
Mhm.
And it's the work, it's the practice, it's the keeping at it, and within a short time you'll have a little bit more experience and a little bit more experience, and you'll eventually get to the point where you know yourself as a writer better. You develop, I think they call that voice, right?
Developing your own voice. Sure.
Mhm.
So here's the thing, Michelle, like even with me personally, I've been writing songs a long time. Most of my life revolves around songwriting and talking about songwriting and studying songwriting and teaching, but I still have times, and I'll call them seasons, where I think everything I does suck, and I feel like I
Mm.
have sort of like imposter syndrome, like,
Yeah.
who the hell do I think I am? And um like my time has passed. Like, I wrote some really good songs a couple years ago. Yeah, it was a good run. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, well, that well dried up.
Yeah.
But then
Where's the pasture? Put me out in it.
exactly. Like, "Doyle, can I live in your garage?" Like, I'm just gonna hide for a while. Um,
I want to say a word or two about imposter syndrome, because
yeah.
the more I meet songwriters, the more I meet performers, I always hold them up on a pedestal when I meet them, because they're what I love what they do. And the more I get to know their story through interviews or through talking with them, the more I realize that they suffer from imposter syndrome. There's a really successful regional band they're signed, they're doing great. And the lead singer said that she stayed away from music for 12 years because she didn't have the confidence in her voice to stand up in front of people and sing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You are killing it. I mean, on all platforms, you are just totally killing it. And so I think that's part of the process too. And what I'm learning is, along with vulnerability, is to take leaps.
Mhm.
Even when you don't feel like you're ready, even when you don't feel like this is the right, everything in your being saying no, leap. Because I'm the most introverted, the most quiet, the most um, person who's able to hide, which Godin talks about a lot.
Mm.
It's easy to hide and not share what you have or what you create, and that was me. And now I've learned about leaping, and I kind of don't care about the results. I just jump in and do it, and sometimes it
Yeah.
works, and sometimes I fail.
But that's how you learn, right? Like, if you don't take the chance and if you don't jump in and sort of try things, how do you know if it works or not, right? Like, we have this imaginary sort of critic that sits on our shoulder and
Mhm.
tells us like, well, people aren't going to like that, or you shouldn't put this out until it's absolutely perfect. And it's like, well, perfect doesn't exist ever. Um, you ask any, like, even like it's awesome that you brought up, you meet people that you respect, and then the way that they think about their own work is the way that we all think about our own work, right? Like sometimes you will really put someone or like a project on a pedestal, excuse me, and then you find out later that the person who actually worked on it is like, yeah, I don't really like that song, or I really don't like, I could have done that so much better. And you're like, what? Like that song has been part of my life. And like, so it's like, we don't get to decide. So you might as well just like go for it.
I love that we don't get to decide. That's profound. Um, George Jones. If you mention George Jones, to somebody they're going to say he stopped loving her today, right?
Yep.
That's the iconic song for George Jones. He hated that song. He went in and he recorded that song because the label told him to, or it was a paycheck or something. And he's
Yeah.
like, "Okay, I'm done with that," right? And that song defined him. Um, and so, yeah, it goes back to what we started at the beginning about getting in that point where you just don't know if anything's good, but you just keep going. And you never know. There's a song that was brought to my attention, and it's called Infinite. And I don't remember the artist's name, but she talks about singing for an audience and having somebody look up while she's looking down because she's so ashamed of nobody's interacting with her, and then this person looks up and makes a connection and talks to her later and says, "That's exactly the song that I needed tonight."
Mm,
And so the line is, "You never know who's going to need it tonight." And so
mm.
it gets back to that idea of being vulnerable and being generous as an artist, both writing and performing, right? I don't know, I may flop, but I'm going to offer what I've got because what I've got may connect with you and it might be what you needed. And by you connecting, then that fills what I need, right? So it's this real collaborative thing.
Have you ever felt like stopping where you felt discouraged?
I think I'm too new to know. There, there's an album a group made and they entitled it "Too Dumb to Know When to Stop," and that's kind of way I feel. Is I just keep going because I'm getting so much out of this journey, and I'm not a hit songwriter. I'm not a person that's living a lavish millionaire lifestyle, but I love what happens because I open myself up. My friend Lance Benson, who produced my first EP, um, was talking to me this summer, and he said, "Doyle, every time I perform, I try to be more vulnerable because when I'm vulnerable in front of people, that's when people come up afterwards and say that that it connected." And so I just keep thinking about that. This is my time to, because there's growth. There's growth
Mm.
in being vulnerable and generous as an artist, and that's what I'm after more than a hit song, more than a life in Nashville. I'm growing as a human being through this process. There's a quote somebody said that uh, the person who creates the art is changed by that act of creation. And I
Yeah.
think that's so true. I think that I'm a different person than I was before I started songwriting. So, no, I will songwrite until they unplug the ventilator.
Well, what you just said is 100% why I started at home songwriting, because I believe there's a lot of people out there that want to do it, but they don't necessarily want to do it like the Nashville hustle, right? Like,
Mhm,
I don't want to do the Nashville hustle. I don't want to. I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to be a starving artist, right? Like,
mhm.
and I really don't want to live in Nashville. Now, I would travel there if there's opportunity. Anybody watching, like, let's talk. but but the reality is do it because you love it, because if you're doing it just to like make money, or if you're doing it just to sort of get something like material, I think there's many faster ways to make money, but what you get with songwriting is the things that you can't put in a bank account, right? Like it's the meeting the people, it's the having something that you've written connect with somebody. Do you know what I mean? Like somebody wants your song at a wedding, or somebody wants, I think it's one of the biggest honors is when somebody wants your song at like a funeral, or like those different things. Like that to me, I mean, I don't know what it feels like to win a Grammy, but the fact that someone cares enough about something that you created to where they want it as part of their journey, like that's more than money to me, right? Like, would
Mhm.
you agree with that, or what are your thoughts with that?
Oh, definitely. The if and I'm trying to remember which book it was that I read, but the author of the book, oh, it's Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. She
Yeah.
talked about when your art doesn't owe you a living. And that was
Ooh.
just such a cold water in the face kind of bracing moment, but I love it because the minute that I start saying, "Okay, my songs are gonna have to pay my mortgage," all of a sudden that changes my relationship with how I create,
Yep.
and there's no way for me to stop that affect on my writing. Whereas now I'm free. I can write whatever I want, and I'm the personal growth and that feeling of winning the lottery. We talked about this last time. When I finish a song that feels right, I felt like I wouldn't trade lottery winnings for that because
Yeah.
that's something that the lottery winnings come from outside and aren't really earned, whereas a good song is earned,
Ooh.
and I've grown from that process. Whereas outside money coming in, there's no growth there for me, and maybe I don't want to I don't want to discourage people who want to write in other ways because this is just what works for me. And
That's what I was gonna say is, if somebody actually does wanna write professionally and actually wants to do that, like, more power to you. Like, go do it. Like, send me tickets to the Grammys when you get there.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think there people can do it. It's possible, and just for me personally, that's really not my my mission or my intention or my purpose. I think my purpose is to teach other people to write songs that they can do other things with, whether that's just for
Mhm,
fun, if it's to learn more to get more commercial, because the deal is, no matter if we're doing it for fun or if we're doing it to make money, we all want to write better, right? Like we all want to sound like we're professional songwriters. And that is totally possible and totally doable and something you can learn.
mhm,
So yeah, don't want to ever discourage people for chasing that. I'm at a point in my life where I'm very established in Minnesota. Like, the chances of me packing up and moving to Nashville are like 0 and dropping, right? Like, unless there's a big check involved, then we'll talk.
I do think that Hazelene is right on the mark with talking about living in a creative atmosphere. I think that's so huge. But I haven't had to travel to find that. I travel to the cities quite a bit, but I haven't had to travel across the country to find that. The internet helps a ton, but I've been able to get that need of being in a creative sphere met in the hinterlands of Bemidji. And but I love that idea of what she's saying. Um, this idea of going somewhere else to do this work doesn't appeal to me because I love where I live and I love the life that I have, and I will chase this with all I have, but I don't need to go any because I think if you go to Nashville, and I know I've got people very close to me who have made that leap, and then you get there and they're saying to you, "Oh well, but everything's happening in L.A." And so you go
Yeah.
to LA and you can chase the idea. Whereas I think in Minnesota, we're really lucky because we have a creative community that feels like none other. And I get what Hazeline's saying about getting energy and inspiration from that situation because I do.
So, for some reason, I wasn't getting the comments updating, so I'm just going back and rereading some of these things
Mhm.
that I totally missed. Doyle, you were probably seeing it more than I. Um,
Oh,
there was some
well,
good stuff.
oh,
Let's see.
very yeah. It's been an active comment
Yeah, I
box.
wasn't seeing it. Um, This one I noticed too, like, this is, Technic says, "I didn't used to put out my music out there," but then someone said, "Why bother doing it if no one ever gets to hear it?" Which I thought was a fair point.
I
Um,
agree.
but, like, for me, I don't have a lot of people that listen to my music, right? Like, I've released hundreds of songs online, and I have, like, 5 monthly Spotify listeners. But
Mhm.
I don't care because I feel like the universe will get it to whoever needs to hear it whenever they need to hear it. And I also know that I'm not really marketing my music. And when
Mhm.
it comes down to like what makes some stuff successful and other things not successful, it has nothing to do with the quality of work in like mainstream music. It all has to do with who has the biggest budget to like push it. Um, I see
Well, and with
Michelle.
all of the
Oh,
oh,
go ahead,
yeah.
Doyle.
Um, with all the promotion work that I've engaged in on the last 3 albums, there's been gains, and there have been things that have been really great to get, and it's beautiful. But some of the, most amazing things that have affected me lately have come from, individual performances. And last June, we put on a little folk festival in my driveway with a we bought one of those big tents, like the Great British Bake Off type of tent, and we had this little festival and it was beautiful. And from that festival, there's been so many people who have said, I started doing this because I heard Nikki Lemire play harp at that.
Mm.
I started writing because of that night, or I did this because of that night. I'm like, wow, that's way more profound than, oh, I got 1,000 Spotify spins, you know.
Spotify.
That's the new platform.
Spotify, yeah. Um, Streams don't equal fans, right?
Hmm.
Like, and that's what I hear so many of my friends who are really like putting out music and actually performing and stuff. Th- like actual fans, like you may have 1,000 streams, but are any of those people actually showing up to your show or like, are they actually buying merch? Are they actually buying physical products? Like, I think as songwriters and as artists, I think there's there's this thought that you're either just an amateur or you're like huge, right? But there's this spectrum of what you can do on your own in between there. Like I know a lot of people who make their living doing music and writing their songs and no one's ever heard of them
Yeah.
to the amount that they're not household names, right? But they have fans and you find your niche. Um
Well, and who's ever to say time and place, because we are a vast country, a vast world, and we move about, right? And so some of my most profound musical experiences have been when I've been at a street performance down in Minneapolis randomly on a Friday night, and my wife and I being just blown away by this performance of somebody that we'd never heard of before.
yeah.
And it's like, wait a second, that person probably will never be number one on any chart, but they affected me, right?
Mhm.
I feel like I've led us into all kinds of philosophy, and maybe your folks who are on want to know more about like how to do the thing. So I'm kind of interested in what you've realized in the past couple of, say the past couple of weeks, that has helped you as a writer, Chad. What's really been something that has spurred you on, or a realization you've gotten?
Me personally,
Yeah.
um, well, first off, I wanna comment that philosophy and mindset is a great conversation because being an
Okay.
artist is so taxing on the mind. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? Like, people would, like, nobody listens to my music. Why aren't they listening to my music? Does that mean my music sucks? Like, am I doing the right thing? Am I actually any good? Like, I think philosophy and keeping ourselves mentally in the game is so important. So talking about this is awesome. And I think it helps people to connect and feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Um, Michelle says it's very engaging, loves the
Oh, thank you,
discussion.
Michelle.
I want to comment on what Hazeline said. Hazeline says she's loved the idea of living where many artists are, and I think there's many artists everywhere.
Mhm.
I wanna so I wanna share the story of when I met you, Doyle. So
Okay. Yeah.
this was pre-pandemic, I think.
Mhm.
I think it was maybe the summer of 2019. Um, Hazeline says a season of rest. That sounds
Which
really nice too.
important.
That's good. Yes.
That's super important as an artist, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, picture it, summer of 2019. Um, I got invited by you or Pat Hager, I think, who I
Yeah.
love Pat. She's one of those snowbirds that leaves Minnesota, goes to Arizona in the winter. But in the summer, she's here and she asked me to come and do an in-person workshop at the library in Park Rapids, Minnesota. Park Rapids is about 3 hours from Minneapolis. Um,
Yeah. And maybe 3 or 4,000 people. Tiny.
maybe.
Yeah.
And I go up there thinking, first off, dear God, am I going into Trump country? Please, Lord, don't let me go into Trump country. But when I got there, um, I was so shocked at, like, how many artistic people and, like, how many songwriters showed up to this thing, and you and your dad showed up,
Mhm.
and some of the friends, and, like, I was blown away with the community of songwriters and artists that were in this little town, and, like, Michelle says yeah, Florida, we'll save that for another episode.
That's why she
Um,
needs to come to Cross Lake next fall.
yeah, Michelle, we'll accept you here in Minnesota, it's all good. Bring your coat. Um, but I was so, like, I I still, like, think back to, like, the amount of people that are connected and the amount of creativity and all of that stuff. Like, it just made me see that you don't have to be in a big city, and it's really kind of what you make of it, and there's people like you, um, all over the country, right? Like, it's like, "Oh my gosh." Like, they always say your vibe attracts your tribe, which
Ooh, yeah.
I don't know if I like the word tribe because it's a little bit of, like, stealing from the Native Americans, and I
Mhm.
don't but the idea is your people who
Yeah.
connect with you. Like, if you focus on something, like, the universe sort of brings you together, and I felt that in Park Rapids of all places, like, and that's how me and you met.
Mhm.
I met Debbie Center, who's an awesome creative person. There were some other people there that just it was an awesome experience. So no matter where you live, I think you can find your people, but I also think it's cool that we can do this online and we don't have to wear pants.
Bringing it back around. But
Right?
that day in Park Rapids, I don't know if you recall, but I had my notebook open and I was taking, like, word for word whatever you were saying because it was lighting me up. I'm an English major, and so I worked with poetry, I'd worked with words, and there was a portion of what you were saying that just rang all of those bells. But also, it was all this new learning of how we put songs together, how things get constructed, and it's not this magic thing that I have to wait for a muse to show up. You were talking about we start here, we do this, we do this. Not that there's a recipe, but it's possible to do it without waiting for some big moment, right?
Yeah.
And that just lit me up. And so I still that's in my pile of notebooks too. The notes from that session, and to go back to vulnerability, when you open yourself up, then you attract the people that are your people. And I
Yes.
find that again and again and again. How can I love these people that I'm around so much when I've only known them for such a short amount of time? Well, it's because we've opened ourselves up and we're vulnerable and our hearts have met, right?
Yeah.
Um, to go back to Elizabeth Gilbert one more time, that Big Magic book is just I've read it 3 or 4 times, but she talks about how creativity predates as human race predates. They found evidence of creativity tens of thousands of years before evidence of agriculture. And so
Yeah.
we've got innately in us this need to create. And we live in a society that is so capitalistic or whatever it is that says, well, if you don't make money from what you create, then somehow you're less than.
Mhm.
Whereas when I create, I'm fulfilling that need that has been a need for human beings for tens of thousands of years. And it feels good and it changes me. Um, you talk about artists, and it really, in my journey, as much study and as much writing, as much performing as I've done, it took me till about a year ago when I went to the Big Turn Festival and they gave us wristbands that said artist, and they were really
Mm.
beautiful, kind of like a cloth thing, and it said artist, and the that was the moment that I thought, oh yeah, what I'm doing is art, and it's worth, like, I've earned that moniker. And you think about how dumb is that, that I waited until I was 54 years old to think of myself in that perspective, because like Godin says, nobody, you don't have to have your BFA to be an artist. You
Yeah.
just call yourself an artist and the way you are because you do the work.
I'm
So I
I'm
think that's really, that idea of identity is huge.
I'm laughing a little bit because you threw in that, "Oh, yeah. Oh,
Oh
yeah."
yeah.
The
I am
Minnesota
in Bemidji, you know.
the Minnesota came out there, yeah. Um, I wanna go back to what I wanna go back to what Hazeline said. She said she's an odd breed of person. It's like,
Mhm.
"Girl, join us."
Yeah.
Hazeline is an very talented songwriter and singer. In the at-home songwriting community, she posted some songs recently that just give me
Mhm.
chills. So, like, yeah. But I think she also said here, finding people with the same vein. I think that's what is so fun about songwriting retreats. Like, if you have a chance to it would be awesome if you could join us in October in
Mhm.
Minnesota, because there is nothing like being with a bunch of people who can nerd out about the same things, right? Like,
Exactly.
people in your everyday life may not be nerding out about like pre-choruses and chord progressions and like, do you know what I mean? But then you go to a songwriting retreat and you can spend like 3 hours talking about like, what makes a good hook or like things like that that are totally like fun, and everybody geeks out, which is awesome.
Well, and I think songwriting is, the writing community is so vast and diverse, and so there's room for everyone because we're all a different breed. I know I don't fit in all of the circles that I travel, but I always fit in with songwriting people and musicians. Yeah, so I think
That
it's been a gift for me.
that's really deep and true for me as well. Like, I've never thought about that before. Like, music is the place where I fit.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah, well, that's just, it's come from experience for me, is it's, music is, all encompassing, and I always feel like an outsider in other situations, whereas music, has room for me and has demonstrated that even though I'm an older male, who doesn't appeal to a Nashville, type of vibe or a popular music type of vibe, I still am accepted, and I get to do these really amazing things because, and I write songs, and I am dumb enough not to quit.
Do you know who Adam Neely is? Have you ever, uh, Adam Neely, he's a YouTuber, and he does
Okay.
he um, very interesting videos that are, he has a band, he's in a band, but he also does these sort of like documentary style videos about like, where did copyright
Mhm.
come from, and like, is music theory really based on racist ideas, and like, there's all these
Ooh.
like, because what we think of music theory is basically this very white male European way of looking at music, and
Mhm.
shocker, there's other ways of looking at it, duh. Like, but the thing is Adam just did a video about the fact that he has 1,000,000 followers on YouTube, and does that really matter. Like, he talks about how he really gets the joy from just doing what he likes to do and wants to just do what feels right to him. But he talked about a jazz drummer who's 98 years old and still playing jazz.
Yeah.
He's like, "Do you know any YouTubers or any influencers that are going to be doing this when they're 98?" Like, think about athletes too, like football players. They're done, like 40 is old in some sports, right?
Average NFL career is 3 years. Yep.
Yeah. Whereas a musician, we can basically play till we fall over.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And then,
Oh, for
so
sure.
like we have an opportunity as songwriters and musicians that we don't ever have to stop. Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, had a saying that I used to live by is, if you don't stop, you can't be stopped.
Ooh, yes. Yes. I like that so, so much. I've written down Adam Neely here. I'm gonna check him out. When while you're digesting that comment, I listened to an audiobook by Malcolm Gladwell and Paul Simon this
Ooh.
fall, and it's fantastic because Malcolm Gladwell just goes, 50 levels deep. But he
Yeah.
talked about the study of artists, and he said that most artists have a trajectory that they start here, they go up, and they get really good at one thing, and then the rest of their career is a fall and then a flat line again. And he said that Simon's career is a totally anomaly because he's gone up and he's stayed up throughout his entire career. And it's been over 50 years, possibly 60 years.
Yeah.
Because his first songs were popular very, very young, but he didn't stay in the same thing. He didn't stay in that same type of theory. He always went out and found um, other rhythms. He went to New Orleans or the Muscle Shoals area and got that sound and let that sound affect his songs. He went over to Africa and got that sound and those rhythms and he's always been a study of rhythms. And I think that's really it goes back to that idea of changing the process to get the next evolution of whoever you are or whatever your art is. I got to hear Dave Lamont speak this fall, and he's a great folk artist. And they replayed a song of his that was on an album from 10, 15 years ago. And they asked him, would you go back and when you listen to this now, do you think, oh, I'd have done this differently, or I would change this type of production or whatever? He says, of course. He says, but I never fall prey to that thought because that's a snapshot of who I was at that time. And I love that because then it takes off this weight of I have to create the best thing that's ever been done. No, I have to create the best thing I'm capable of right now. And then I keep trying to evolve and find the next best version of what I can create, if that makes any sense.
Totally makes sense. And something that I think about too is the fact that it is what I'm writing the best thing ever, or is it the best that I know I could do? Most of the time the answer is no, but it's the best I can do right now.
Yeah.
And I think that helps kind of take away a little bit of that, I don't know if you'd call it regret, or like that feeling of like, gosh, like I know this could be better, but I don't know what to do with it. And it's
Well,
like you're
go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's like maybe you haven't learned the lesson that you need yet.
Mm.
Um,
I think I like that idea of you haven't learned the lesson yet because it speaks of that growth piece. But I also love how you mentioned relieving that pressure. And I think we all put that pressure on ourselves, kind of that internal critic stuff. And we need the critic at some point. But once it's done, once you put it out there, now it's time to relieve that pressure because that was the best you could do at that time. And by doing it, you became better.
the other thing too is I think growth as an artist or growth as a songwriter comes so slowly that you don't see it in the moment.
Mhm.
Um, like when I teach Berkeley students, the class that I teach lasts 12 weeks, so we spend 12 weeks working on their lyrics and what they've written in week 1 is completely different than what they're writing by week 12.
Mhm.
But in the heat of the work, you don't see that change until you stop and look back and are like, wow, like I have grown. And I think there are times where we look back at things we've written and we say like, oof, I thought that was good, but maybe maybe not so much. Like that's a
Mhm.
sign that you're growing. Like that's a good thing, right? Like you should feel good that you're seeing the work in a different way because you've learned a different, thing or a different way of looking at it.
Oh, for sure. I can point exactly to that middle album up on the wall, Clear and True. I look back at that and I think, this. And then I'm like, but wait a second. Without Clear and True, I wouldn't have gotten Sweet Difficult Sounds. I wouldn't have gotten Together We Are the International Treasures. That was a
Yep.
necessary step. And I'm not saying the production was bad. I'm not saying the writing was bad. It's just there's growth. And
Yep.
of course, with growth, you're going to look back at a previous version of yourself and say, oh, but we had growth to do and there's more growth to do. And I just think that songwriting has been the key for me. Uh, I started after I'd hit the kind of the top level on my job. I'm a teacher, and you after so many years and so many courses, you hit that cell on the pay scale. And my kids went off to be independent, and there was like no more things out there that were important until I found songwriting. And now I found that I could do this for 150 years, and I would
Mm,
never figure it out, and I would never write 51 number one songs, but I'm so joyful in the process.
yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Are there anybody out there, as we'll probably wrap up within a few minutes here, but as we're talking about these things, like, are there struggles that some of you out there watching are having, or like questions, or things you want to talk about? And definitely, this is a safe space. Vulnerability is good. Nothing that you say is going to probably surprise us and or make us judge you. Um, is there
I
anything
love
that?
what I love what Hazeline is saying about perfectionists. That's I have to fight that because I've got that tendency too. And yeah, definitely, you have to free yourself from that because it constricts your work, in my opinion.
It does. And perfect, the definition of perfect is always changing, and I mean, perfection's not possible, right? Like,
Right.
it's not.
Well, and if I look at a number one country song today and I try to write exactly like that, I'm already 2 or 3 years behind the curve. Right.
Yep.
I'm looking at something somebody wrote 2 or 3 years ago that was perfect then. Right.
Yeah. Technic says, "I'm enjoying the journey even though I haven't figured out the destination yet." Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Jason Mraz wrote a song, and it's just I think the refrain is I'm making it up, making it up as I go along, and he's a really amazing artist, and he's admitting that he's making it up as he goes along, just like the rest of us.
Yeah, and when you were talking about Paul Simon, that made me think of, you said, uh, artists who have the freedom or the ability to try different things and do different things. Like, I think that it would be boring if we all just did the same thing over and over again. Um, but I was thinking about that. Sometimes artists, if they sign, if they have the money people, the label, sometimes their hands are actually tied. Like they don't have the ability to go and do whatever they want. It becomes what's going to pay the money back.
Mhm.
And I think I had a huge aha moment years ago when I read the book by Donald Passman, called "Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business." Uh,
Mhm.
it's a must read. Everybody, like, it, it will change the way that you look at the music business in a very smart way, is what I'll say, because you'll understand things don't work like we all think. Like, oh, well, an artist is just great, so if they send their music somewhere, some star maker is going to swoop down and we're going to make this happen. You learn that a record label is basically a bank, and
Mhm.
basically what they're doing is saying, we're going to give you x amount of money and you have to make an album, and um, you need to make all that money back plus some before you see anything else. And any videos we do, any promotion we do, that comes out of the artist cut, not the label's cut. That comes out of the artist cut. So you're basically getting a loan plus having to pay everything else on top. So you're paying the loan back, but you're also paying for everything else. And I think if you understand the business, it won't make you feel so bad about if you're not in the business, because the business has not very much to do with creativity. It has everything to do with how do we get our money back. Technic says, I was about to say, isn't pop music's top 40 chart all about doing the same thing over and over again? Yeah, do what everybody else does, but do it differently.
Oh,
Basically, like,
except AJR. I will fight for AJR. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
They sounded so different than anything.
Hazeline says she struggles with writing best lyrics and learning as she goes. I know I'm growing, but I often want to write like others, but I know I need to learn how to write my best way and learn as I go. Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. Like, I think when you're starting and when you're learning, I think one of the best ways to learn is by using others as a model or as a template.
Mhm.
But at some point, trying to step away from that template and allow yourself to sort of come through. And I think if you write enough, that naturally happens. And I think we're all a big mush of what our influences are, right?
Yeah.
Like, my music is a conglomeration of everything I've ever listened to, everything I've ever studied. Your music is everything you've ever listened to, anything you've studied, you know. Um,
Um, Austin Kleon's got a book called Steal Like an Artist. And he talks about that very same thing, is that if you want to write like Laurie McKenna, you go deep dive and you find out what Laurie McKenna's influences are. And
yep.
then you'll find out how to write like that. And it to me, freeing myself up from the, oh man, that I'd love that, but it sounds like this person. No, Petty did that. He ended up writing songs that sounded like other people, not consciously
Yeah.
stealing, but just was like, this is what he wrote, and it happens because there's only 12 notes, right?
Yeah. I mean, like Prince, even like people look at Prince as being a musical genius, but if you actually listen to the people that Prince listened to, like Joni Mitchell, Sly and the Family Stone, Graham Central Station, like all of those old songs sound like Prince because Prince sounds like that's where he learned, right? Like we all learn from somewhere. There's actually like art in itself has to come from something before it. There's
Mhm.
always a piece of something that's happened before in anything that we do. Like there's no escape to it. Technic says, I can understand from the commercial side why genres are important, but I feel they can trap you into what is and isn't allowed in your music. Oh,
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the bad sides of the business side of it, because the genres are a construct that help businesses market your music. And I think that if you can avoid that, and one of the great joys of being an independent is that I don't have to. Like
Yep.
I was saying earlier, with this album that I'm coming up with now, is it could fit right in the jazz realm. But man, I come from 70s country. That's and it doesn't matter. The box is here. I'm all over the place. Sometimes I'm in the box. Sometimes I'm out, and it doesn't matter because I'm creating.
You know who gets to make the decision? Whoever is writing the check.
Yep.
I mean, really, right? Like that's I mean, if you're doing your own project, you're funding it yourself, then you get the say. Um, if a label's paying for it, then of course they're going to want to have the say.
Yeah.
Um, it's unfortunate that music has become a commodity. It's unfortunate that record labels are owned by private equity companies. It's unfortunate that there are shareholders. Like labels don't take chances to develop people anymore. Like, they want people who already have a, um, like, a already established fan base. How many
Mhm.
TikTok followers do you have? How many followers do you have on Instagram? Like, do you have any, sponsorship deals? Like, they sort of wanna plug into something that's already there and then get their part of it.
Mhm.
Um, I have been talking to some people that I know that work as, they work at publishers in Nashville,
Mhm.
and I asked them, like, what are publishers looking for? You know, are they looking for songs? Like, what are publishers really looking for?
Mhm.
And of course, at the heart of it, they really want hit songs, right? They want songs for the radio, because radio is the last place where songs are actually still making money. Streaming doesn't make crap, especially on the songwriting side of it. Um, so they want radio hits. So publishers are looking for that. But before they even get to that part, what they're looking for in writers are writers who are well connected in Nashville and have the ability to almost get their own songs cut.
Mhm.
Um, so like publishers are looking for people who are already writing with other published writers and who are already getting a name in town, because even publishers struggle to get songs cut. So they're looking for people who have a leg up in that. So like if you're not in Nashville, you still need to be networking so your name is out there, and you need to be writing with people who are connected, because that's what they're looking for. Is they know that artists and writers can develop their craft, but it's not
Mhm.
everybody that can develop the network and actually make things happen. So that's a huge part of what the world is right now.
You brought a songwriter to the MAS, the Minnesota Association of Songwriters, to do a Zoom interview one time, and his first name was Seth, and he was super connected with all of the Nashville insiders. Like, was texting buddies with Maren Morris's husband, and
Oh, Aaron S. Heiss.
oh,
That was
Aaron
Aaron
S.
S. Heiss.
Sorry. But he was through all of that. He had grown up there, had gone to that university there, had lived there so long. He had every connection available, had had hits, had had connections with artists, and he at one point in that talk mentioned, every day I think of is the juice worth the squeeze. He said, I'm late 30s. He says, if I'm going to do something else, now's the time to do something else, or
Yeah.
I'm always going to be at a certain earning level.
Yep.
And he says, every day I think, is the juice worth the squeeze? And he had every one of those things that you just mentioned that publishing houses look for, that the business side looks for. And I think that you see less investment in artists these days because the business side is making less and less and less. I think
Yeah.
Spotify's drawn off so much away. This idea of music being a commodity now, it's not. It's a service, right? If I can get so many listeners through Spotify, that's the only way they're making money, and their profit margins, they will eventually go away. That's what
Yep.
I'm reading, is that Spotify will be replaced by the next big whatever. And
Yep.
so me trying to sell CDs, it's not worth it right now because my music is a service. All of your bigger name artists, they don't make money on the sale anymore. They make money on the touring, because then that's saleable, right?
Yep.
And so I think that the more I can stay away from all of that silliness, the better for me, as because I want to be an artist. I want to create, and that's what fulfills me.
I wanna help people write like they're a professional, even if they're not.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I think that and that's what my goal for myself is too, is like, I wanna write at that level, even if I'm not playing the industry game. And again, if the industry thing is what people wanna do, that's great, but like what you
Hmm.
just said, Doyle, that's not the avenue you're going down, and that's not really the avenue that I'm taking, but it's definitely possible. But I think people need to know realistically what they're up against, and what is out there, and how the industry works. And I think that knowledge is what prepares you for that. When people come to me and say, how do I sell my songs? It's like, well, the fact that you're asking that question means that you don't understand the business and you also are probably not there yet, right?
Yeah.
Hazeline says she knows a few professional artists and songwriters in the CCM lane, but don't know them well enough to say, hey, let's write your next album. And that's the thing, like you have to um develop the people relationship before you try to like say let's work together, right? Like especially if there's people who are established, you can't just approach them and be like, "Hey, help me." You know, you have to find a way that you can provide value to the other people as well. I
Well,
love
and
what I love what Michelle just said. She said, "Personally, I want to write at a professional level, even if I'm the only one listening to my songs."
oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes, that's me. Like that sums it up. But I also want to share what I know because there's nothing better than someone saying like, "I just wrote my best song from what you taught me," you know?
Um, to go back to Hazeline's comment about knowing people and when to know when to ask, I go back to what you and I learned through Andrea Stolpe, and it's right with the people that are at your level,
Yes.
and then because that's going to be the next generation, right?
Yep.
My friend Ted Heineshevitz, that whole eat local movement applies. That whole idea, that construct applies to music. Um, you're going to make the best connections locally, or people near you, or people that you interact with who, like I could try and write with Laurie McKenna. I don't bring much to that, right? But I
Mhm.
can gain by writing with people who are in my sphere of influence, and we're the next generation, right? It'll eventually work or it won't, and I'll keep writing.
Yeah, I mean, your chances of writing for Taylor Swift are basically you're not. You know
Oh,
what
I
I mean?
would. I would if she asked. I would.
Well, I mean, I would too. But you need to find the Taylor Swift on the way up, right? Like you need the next Taylor Swift because your chances of writing with the people who are already up there, they already have their teams. Everybody works with who they know, who they trust. The idea of working within your class, like class as in like school classes, right? Like
Mhm,
if you're a freshman, write with the other freshmen because some of those people are going to make it all the way to graduation, right? And some of those
mhm,
people are going to be the next Taylor Swift. So they talk about that in Nashville where the tides kind of bring these groups of people up at a similar time. So it's all
mhm.
about being within that sort of class. And that's what Andrea Stolpe um, talks about. Um, I'm actually leading a workshop with Andrea later this afternoon. So it's funny that her name came
Awesome.
up. Um, Michelle says, sadly, COVID took away a lot of local avenues for getting together with other songwriters, even in Florida.
Mhm.
Yeah, COVID killed a lot of venues and like, but I mean, I still think there's, opportunity to, um, find things, even if it's small places or small get-togethers for sure.
Well,
Um,
and I'll put my plug in for the singer-songwriter songwriting challenge.
yeah,
It's a Facebook group, and it's open to everybody, and you will find your people. It's currently very there's a lot of people involved, but that's it's a great place to write, because you'll make connections, and it's all online.
I like what Hazeline says, "It's the team." She says, "I need a team where people I know will make good music together." Yeah, and
Mhm.
it just takes time, meeting people, going to live performances, like, wherever you're located. I think, Hazeline, if I remember correctly, you're in Oklahoma. I bet you there are some amazing singer-songwriters in Oklahoma. Um, Carrie Underwood's from Oklahoma. Like,
Mhm.
you need to just find the next Carrie Underwood, Hazeline.
Isn't Blake Shelton from there?
He
I think
is.
he's from, yeah.
Yeah, Hazeline says, "Yep." No matter where you are, you should grow where you're planted. And to be honest, you probably have a higher chance of doing some really cool things in smaller areas because you're a bigger fish in a smaller pond. And the small pond is a great place to learn where to swim.
Well, and when it comes to, say, writing with Taylor Swift or whomever it is, that that may or may not be my voice. It may or may not be my jam. I'm going to be able. No one can write like me, right?
Yep.
And I don't know if I want to be in those lanes because I think the lanes are constricting to me. Whereas right now I can write anything.
Yep.
And I do. I write everything, Chad. I write some that are decent, some a lot that's not. I just write everything.
Same. I know. Sometimes I'm doing pop, sometimes I'm doing country. Um, sometimes there's just stuff that doesn't become anything. It's just maybe a weird recording of a music track or some chord progression that like never goes anywhere. Or maybe it's just I think the key is just create, right? Like that's what we're here to do. We're here to create. Um, so yeah, with
Well,
that, I think I got to get going today, but I think we could go for hours, which someday we
well,
will.
every time I feel this way, it's like, why don't we just do this on the regular, Chad? Because I love visiting with you. And to speaking about trying to get out of a rut, I'm currently top lining. I've never done this before. Well, maybe once, but I'm trying to get out of my rut by top lining this jam that this guy Chad Shank wrote like a year and a half
Oh.
ago. Sent it to Ted, and it kind of ended up with me. So I've been working on that the past couple of days. I'll send it your way when I get done.
Oh, I kinda remember that song.
It's
That's
way outside my bounds, so I love it.
awesome. I'll be curious to see what it is because I kinda remember making it. I don't even remember what the music sounds like. But we did a top lining challenge within At Home Songwriting,
Oh yeah.
um, and it was really fun to send out the same track to everybody, and we got, like, 20
Mhm.
some songs that all sounded different to the same track, which was super cool.
Well,
There's a
what you're
question.
doing with at-home songwriting is fabulous. I'm impressed with what you've done there, and the heart behind it, where it's really to help songwriters and to be that place that spurs people on. That's so admirable and fits with who you are. I love that.
Oh, thank you. Tom had a question for you, Doyle. Where is the singer-songwriter writing challenge?
So it's on Facebook, and if you go to singer songwriter songwriting challenge, you'll find it. And there's a contact for a woman named Laurel Hay, and she's the one who gives us prompts. We're about halfway through our winter season. You get a prompt on Sunday, and you have to videotape or video yourself with your phone and submit it to the website. And then you have all these great songwriters that will comment on and cheer you on. And it's not, oh, you need to have a bridge here. It's, hey, look at you created this, and we celebrate with you. So you're
Awesome.
welcome all the time. All are welcome.
Awesome. Well, Doyle, thanks so much for hanging out. Let's definitely do this again. I love doing this and I've gotten good feedback when I do these with a lot of other people. So the next live stream I'm actually doing is next Thursday. I'm actually doing this with a rapper and he's also a writer on medium.com, so he writes these blog posts. So he's just the general overall creative. He goes by the name Bo Diz, but
Mm,
I love his rapping. He lives in Michigan, originally from Minnesota. But we're going to have a creative conversation. One thing that he's doing that I want to ask him about is he's skipping the online distributors and he's actually
mm,
doing a pay whatever you want directly to me for his music. So he's going um uh like direct to consumer kind of a thing.
yeah.
So
Pa- Patreon is awesome.
yeah. Technic says he'd be there, but it's very late in the UK. Yeah, you can watch the replay though. The replay will be up. And Michelle, thank you. Hazeline, thank you. Tom, Jeanette, Ron. I'm gonna forget other people that are on here right now, but it's always fun to have you join. And hopefully some of you will join the in-person retreat we do this October. Would be awesome. Doyle, you too.
All right, I've got my calendar open. I'm putting it down.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you, and we'll see you all soon.